Okay.
All right. So I just want to mention that we also have Pat Dunn with us tonight. Pat is a founder of Senior Women Living Together, and I'm going to provide a link to that website for anyone who's interested in your chat. Okay, so if you check your chat, there will be a link to Senior Women Living Together for anybody who's interested in that. And we're very pleased to have Dr. Mirza with us tonight to inform us about home sharing. I know that's a topic of great interest to a lot of us. He is the Director of National Partnerships and Knowledge Mobilization with Help Age Canada, and he's an assistant professor at the University of Toronto. And I can tell you, there's a couple of his students here tonight, and having recently spoken at one of his U of T classes, I can tell you that he's much loved and admired by his students. Dr. Mirza has been a strong proponent of community-based alternatives to institutionalization, so we're very pleased to have him share his expertise on this topic with us tonight. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Mirza. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for the invitation and for this opportunity to speak to you today about the Canada Home Share Program and Harry for the tech support and the IT work behind the scenes. So I hope this feels more like a conversation between all of us instead of me presenting to you, but I will tell you that parts of this will get me a bit worked up and emotional, and I'll try to keep it as objective as possible, but I can't promise. So, you know, the title of my talk tonight is How Home Sharing Can Support Aging in Place. And I have to also say that with these two roles that I have, I get a really good experience with really community-based work that happens through Help Age Canada, which is a national charity, and also through my academic work at the University of Toronto. And I also just really appreciate, Trish, and I said I was going to say this, that you didn't use my long bio, because that one, it really does feel like it was written by my mom when people read it out. And it is because it was written by my mom, because she's always saying to me, she's like, oh, you don't talk enough about yourself and whatever. So that's that part. But there's a little bit more.
Dr. Mirza, can you maybe put your mic up a little bit? I think it would be clearer if you did.
Sure,
okay,
I can
great,
do that.
Thank you.
So beyond my mother writing my introduction and my bio for this, I can also tell you that there is a bit more of a family connection to a program like this one. I grew up in the 1980s in the city of Toronto, and if some of you are familiar with this sort of image here, you might remember this is actually right on Bloor Street. This is what the TTC used to look like. And my grandfather and my grandmother lived at Bloor and Dovercourt. And when I was a high school student, my grandmother actually unexpectedly passed away, leaving my grandfather alone and, you know, wanting to stay in his home, but actually he was unable to. He was living in a 2-bedroom condo, which seemed too big for him at the time. But he wanted to still go to Dufferin Mall, and he wanted to go to the local library and all the other things that were really important for his everyday well-being. But over time, we started to notice that, you know, he was feeling a little bit more depressed, and we encouraged him to move to Vaughan, where I live right now, because all of my mother's brothers and sisters live here, and so he would have a supportive setting where he could live. And I have to tell you that his condition actually didn't improve. His demeanor didn't improve, and the sad part of the story is that he was actually a victim of elder abuse by someone who is related to our family by marriage. And ultimately, my grandfather passed away as a result of suicide in his mid-80s. And I'll tell you that this is not a unique experience, and it's something that I think about a lot, even though, you know, I'm on the university campus a lot and I'm in the city of Toronto a lot. I think about my grandfather and how programs like Home Share might be able to address some of the things that he was feeling at the time. Financial precarity, feeling a bit isolated, a little bit disconnected. And so, you know, I think about that in the context of this program as well. So there is a bit more of a connection beyond just the program in itself. But when we look at some of the statistics, and I'm telling you that, you know, my grandfather's experience of being isolated and having gone through these sort of life transitions, it's not unique or special. And that's the unfortunate part about it. In 2016, we hit this very big milestone where older adults were actually outnumbering young people in Canadian society. And the thing that we heard more than anything was this issue of a dependency ratio. Our society is now older and more dependent on younger people. And this is, you know, the start of the generational tension part that I'll talk a little bit more about. Now, I want you to think about these questions right here. What is the population of Canada right now? If anyone has an answer to that, you're welcome to type it into the chat. How many older adults are actually over the age of 76? And within this cohort, there's a real fast growing older adult population. How many older adults are 65 to 75? And how many are 50 to 65? And the reason I'm asking these questions is to say, well, are we prepared to address the needs of the current older adult population? That's the group over 65, and the future old, which are quickly approaching that 65 plus group. And if you're playing along, and I'll check the chat. Yeah, close to 38 million residents are in Canada. How many older adults are 76 plus? There's 3 million. And in that group is the 85 plus group, fastest growing demographic in the country. 9 million in the 65 to 75 plus group, and 50 to 65, you have another 7.7 million. So what you can see is that half the population of Canada is growing older. And this number is going to increase over the next little while. Now, where will all of these people live? And it's interesting when I present this slide, people are shocked sometimes and they say, what do you mean? Older adults all don't live in nursing homes and retirement living in communal settings? And I say, no, actually most older adults, more than 90%, live in the community. And actually that's where they prefer to live and that's where they want to stay. And so what I'd like to also highlight to you today is that a lot of our sort of practices and policies are a bit outdated and they don't no longer match what the experiences or the expectations of the older adult population are. And on the left here, what you'll see is that the longer you live in your home or in your community, the more likely it is that you'll want to stay there. And again, this is not groundbreaking information or anything, but are we prepared to support the older adults to really age in place in their homes and communities of choice is the question that I'll use to frame some of our conversation tonight. And the answer I'm going to get to is no, we're really not. And a recent study from Harvard has actually highlighted to us some of the things that we already know. It's not simply about the home that you're living in and the roof and the four walls. It's really not. There's a lot more of these social factors that are very important. Poor neighborhood cleanliness. Well, if you're low income, you're probably going to continue to live in a poor neighborhood and one with poor neighborhood cleanliness. Control of your financial situation. Well, if you were disadvantaged earlier in life, then you'll continue to be disadvantaged in later life. And that's cumulative of an effect from your earlier years. Meeting with children less than yearly. Well, ageism plays a very big part in that. Not being able to work for pay. Well, a lot of older adults want to, but they can't because ageism has driven them out of the market. You know, we had all these labor issues recently where people were feeling that they were forced to retire, not active with children. This is again about intergenerational engagement, not volunteering. Well, there aren't opportunities for older adults in many instances to volunteer. This issue of isolation and loneliness, we've started to really understand what that means because of this pandemic, but it's not something simply about older adults. This is about older adults and younger people. And I think that this is an issue that we can very easily address if we start to think about this and stop saying that, oh, this is just a normal part of growing older. And this issue about being treated with less courtesy or respect, and I've spent a lot of time on this, I think it's really, again, about intergenerational engagement. Younger people and older people do not have forums for exchange and to learn about the differences and similarities between groups and for there to be reciprocity. And so I think these are all really important things for us to think about when we're saying, well, you know, older adults want to stay in their communities. Well, they don't want to just stay in their communities and age in place. What they would like to do is really thrive. And so we have to support all of these issues or address these issues so that individuals can really thrive in their communities. Now, I'm going to use the city of Toronto as a snapshot of really how we have to think about aging and some of the issues that are important for us to consider when we think about how can we support people not simply to age in place, but to really thrive. Well, look at the income for older adults in the city of Toronto. And I'm going to present to you a statistic about how much housing costs in the city of Toronto. And I can tell you that between 15,000 and 25,000 is what 39% of older adults in the city are making. And that's not even able to get you into a one bedroom, one bath home for a year. It's a very gendered issue. And we'll see that emerge as well in the home share program. older women are living alone, and that number has increased over the last 4 or 5 years. Home ownership is a key point here, though. Within all of these statistics, what you'll see is that 66% of older adults in the city of Toronto actually own their home. And there's 2 million empty bedrooms in the homes of those older adults in the Greater Toronto Horseshoe area. Across this country, there are 12 million of those empty bedrooms, and that number is growing. And in North America alone, there's 54 million empty bedrooms. And so this is some of the work here, that, you know, this background work that the City of Toronto did that really started us to think about where the opportunities are to address some of the issues that I've been talking about. Now, what's the real need? Well, again, more than 90% of people over the age of 65 want to be able to age at home and, well, not be at risk for the rising costs associated with inflation and housing affordability, not be at risk for isolation, loneliness, or elder abuse, like my grandfather was. Some of them need a little bit more support with things like shoveling the snow on a day like today to be able to get out of your home. But there's also this issue about vulnerability to fraud. A lot of people for the first time are living alone because of a late life divorce or a life course transition because a loved one has passed away. Now, here's the other part that I'll highlight to you is that the headlines are telling us something. Housing is a scarce resource. And, well, the headlines are saying some people should have it and some other people should not have it, and who deserves what. And in the pandemic, we also saw ageism really in play when, you know, scarce resources like healthcare were being divvied out. If you were over the age of 65, you were told, well, you may or may not get a ventilator if you get sick. And in the same line, I'll tell you that housing too, you can see, makes the headlines because, well, it's a generational issue. It's a scarce resource. Baby boomers are breaking Canada's real estate market. You know, older adults are changing where they want to live as a result of the pandemic because, well, nobody really wants to go to retirement living or into long-term care. And, you know, there's other sad headlines like a lonely man, 75, puts a poster in his window asking for friends after wife's sudden death. Actually, this is really disheartening to me. And the other quick point that I'll highlight for you is that, well, studies have revealed that hundreds of thousands of nursing home residents don't need to be there. They don't have complex healthcare needs. Their actual issues are that their social and emotional needs are not being met in the community, and therefore they're being assessed and moved into places like long-term care, a place where they don't want to be.
Raza, sorry,
Yep.
can you move your mic closer again?
Sure.
The audio is
Yep.
a little choppy. Thank you.
No problem. Yep. Just let me know if you can't hear me, and I'll move it closer and closer until I'm right at my point right here. But so these are the headlines that actually make the cover of the newspaper. And here are some of the other things that we've been hearing. And I'd say these are the shadow headlines that we don't really hear about. But this is what the community members and older adults that I work with are telling me. We lost an older nurse from our small community because she couldn't afford to live there. It's difficult for us to attract students because housing options are so limited. I'm waiting for hip replacement surgery and I can't leave the house now because I can't shovel the snow. I can't afford to go out for dinner or the movies with my friends and family members because, well, housing costs so much and I'm on a fixed income and that fixed income is not going up. And so, you know, we started to think about, could home sharing, these 2 million empty bedrooms, these 12 million across this country, 54 million across this, you know, continent here, really help to address some of the generational issues that we're hearing and some of the questions in the community that really can't quickly be addressed. And I'll play this little clip and I'll remind you that, well, this concept that I'm talking about of home sharing is not really new.
You girls shouldn't sit out here in the sun.
Blanche, we've been so worried about you.
I know.
Oh, I'm so glad you're out.
I'm sorry if I worried you.
Oh, sweetheart, how are you?
I'm okay. I really am. No, at first I wanted to give up, to die, truly. Only time I ever felt worse was when George died. But then I had the kids with me, and I pulled through it. This time I thought, well, this is my last chance. This is my last hope for happiness. I just thought I'd never feel good again.
How long is this story? I'm 80. I have to plan.
Then this morning I woke up and I was in the shower shampooing my hair and I heard humming. Well, I thought there was someone in there with me. No, it was me. I was humming. And humming means I'm feeling good. And then I realized I was feeling good because of you. You made the difference. You're my family. And you make me happy to be alive.
Let's all drive to Coconut Grove for lunch.
Okay.
My treat. We have to celebrate.
What, that she came out of her room?
That we're together.
And that no matter what happens, even if we all get married, we'll stick together.
We'll need a much bigger house.
Oh, sure, Rose. After lunch, you can pick up the lumber.
So I use that video again just to remind everyone that, this concept of home sharing was really popularized and made a TV show out of it because 4 older women wanted to live together and support one another. And I'm going to come back to the Golden Girls again in the last few slides of this presentation because it became an issue. There's an act actually named after them in Ontario because of some of the things that we had been hearing. Now, I think the key point.
Mic closer, please. Sorry.
Mic closer? Yeah, no problem. I think one of the key issues from that video that I want to highlight to you is, again, the profile that emerges of the type of person who could really benefit from this program. Older woman who doesn't want to go into long-term care, an older woman whose husband has passed away, an older woman who never married. But that profile is actually changing. And really what we need to do is to be prepared to accommodate the needs of not only, again, the current older adult profile, but also the future older adult profile, which is constantly changing. Now, I'll highlight to you again here that, some of the older statistics are showing you that the vacancy rates are around 3.2%, and they're closer to 1% now in big cities. There are bidding wars in places like Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal, and even in small communities, because it's not simply an issue of housing affordability, because housing affordability is about sometimes getting into the market, but housing affordability is also about staying in your market and staying in your home and being able to afford that home. And even if you can, it may not be attainable because there's 28 to 30 other people who really are looking for housing just like you are. And so this has become a pretty big challenge here. So, we started to think about those 2 million empty bedrooms as part of the Toronto Senior Strategy and saying, well, how can we leverage those bedrooms to address the issues that we're seeing? Housing precarity, intergenerational engagement levels very low, ageism, financial security issues, because, the pensions and things that people are on are not allowing them to stay up to par with inflation and other costs that are rising. And what we did was, we examined about 1,399 or 1,398 different articles from across the world about different home sharing programs, and we learned quite a bit. And there was a few things that we really learned about. Well, people wanted to participate in a home share program, but they didn't want it to just simply be a financial transaction. They wanted it to be based on a relationship that they were developing with the person in the home, that there was mutual support and aid. The social exchange part was important. The financial motivation part was very important. And they also wanted an outside entity or an agency to help facilitate this because, it's awkward sometimes when you have to ask for money or, there's an issue that comes up as it does when you're living with someone and sharing your home and space. And so these were some of the lessons that we used to build into into what was at that time the Toronto Home Share Program. Now, the Canada Home Share Program is an intergenerational program which matches older adults with extra space in their homes with students who are in the community who are looking for affordable housing. In exchange and in return, the student will provide some support in the home of that older adult. And what it looks like is quite simply this. It's an older adult who hosts a student with a spare bedroom, an older adult who may be at risk for being pushed out of the community because of things like, not being able to shovel the snow or not having someone to share a meal with. Or, and this is not a bright idea here, but it's actually just not being able to change the light bulb on a second floor light fixture, and therefore they can't use that second floor. And people say, well, why can't you just call someone to fix it? Well, because it costs $100, and sometimes an older adult has to make a decision whether they're going to take their medication or get that light bulb fixed. For a lot of older adults, once they are not able to drive, it increases their risk for isolation. And so that spare bedroom can be leveraged to host a student who needs housing and really help facilitate isolation, help facilitate an intervention to address isolation, to increase social engagement. And let's not deny it, there is a financial motivation. It's an additional income source for the older adult and also for the student themselves. It's a savings. And here's a little bit of a surprise. We're going to do some math later. And I'm going to show you a little back of the envelope calculation that we did. And you're going to participate in that with me, because there was a question that people asked. They said, well, how much of a difference does it make? Well, it makes quite a bit of a difference. And so here's a very quick timeline of things. And this program is going into year 5 of its existence, and it's actually going to evolve a little bit more this year. So it started off again as a recommendation of the Trauma Senior Strategy. It got funded as a program. And then as a result of the pandemic, the program was actually, the funding was cut. And back in 2021, as a result of a grant, Toronto Home Share became Canada Home Share and is now an active program in a number of cities across this country. And so it went from a very local, regional program to a national program. And I'll tell you that one of the challenges is that, well, the demand for the program really outstrips our capacity to address, the need that is there. So we're working on building this out on a bit more of a tech platform to streamline some of our processes, and I'll be happy to talk a little bit more about that too. So how does it work right now? Well, you go to our website, you start to fill out some of the application information. If you need some help or support, one of the things that we have learned about this program is that there is a really big digital divide. And I know it sounds cliche, but there's a lot of older adults, I would say up to 30%, who actually don't have access to smartphones. They don't have the digital literacy skills to use an app or a complicated website. And again, this is a function of disadvantage, and this is a function of lower income. And so again, when people are deciding whether they can afford a $50, $60 a month cell phone or the plan that's associated with it, or again, take their medications or go to the movies with their friends, it's a bit of a challenge. And I'll share this number with you right now. But on average, older adults make about $30,000 a year. I gave you the number from the city of Toronto, which is that 40% of them are making $15,000 to $25,000, which is a very low number. But on average, most older adults aren't doing that much better. A little bit more about the process. I'll just highlight to you that it is a little bit more of a rigorous process than what a simple rental arrangement would look like. And the reason for this is because, well, we're trying to facilitate a relationship between people and really looking at the compatibility between these people. And the key piece here also for me is that, well, you get a bit of education. You learn about things like elder abuse. You learn about things like social isolation. You learn about things like, helping support someone's digital literacy needs and what it's like to live with a person who's a little bit older than you or a little bit younger than you. And so this is another key part of this program that I think people feel a little bit more attracted to it, because we do really try to balance out autonomy of the participants, but also safety and risk mitigation. And here are some questions that we ask people, and I won't go through all of them, but it is really pretty thorough review of some of the questions, and this is the way that we do matching, is based on compatibility on not only the person's personal characteristics, but also their expectations and what they want out of the home sharing experience. And this is built on some of the agreements that we make. And I think I'll stop here for just a quick second to highlight to you that one of the challenges with home sharing is that it does not fall within the typical rental agreement that a tenant and a landlord would have. And some people find that to be a little bit, well, I have to think about it, but other people actually really value the flexibility that's in there, that they have a little bit more control and autonomy over agreements like this one. And because it's students with older adults, oftentimes it's a 4-month or 8-month or a 12-month agreement to match with the semester system that the student is going through. And I think one of the other parts that I'll share with you about the program is that the rents that are collected as part of this program, range between $400 and $600. And in exchange, the student is doing some work in the older adult's home for 5 to 7 hours. And what that could look like is, well, taking the garbage out, shoveling the snow, having a meal together every week. And so there's that exchange part that's built into it. And so the rent subsidy is based on that. And I think the key part from this particular slide is that the homeowner and the student are meant to participate in an exchange, and that there's a real benefit for both the older adult and for the student themselves. And so the care provision is not something that we would like to replace through the student being in the presence of that person's home. And so they can't do any things like hands-on care or feeding, administration of medication. or surveillance, because adult children sometimes say, well, I'm worried about my mother. Do you think the student could just report on them? And that's actually not something that can happen as a result of this program either. But things like snow maintenance and meal prep and technical assistance, that can be tailored into the rental agreement to say, well, in exchange for the subsidized rent, you're going to do X, Y, and Z within the context of our home and living situation for the next 4 months or 8 months, whatever the agreement's for. And well, we studied this program a little bit, and we really wanted to know, well, what are the benefits of this program? And you can see from this here that, access to different resources and participation, being part of the larger Canada Home Share network. But the financial part is really important, but so is the intergenerational engagement. And if you think back to the points from the Harvard study about what's really important for people, you can see that it kind of matches what they're saying. Enhanced quality of life, increased connectedness, sense of security and safety and belonging. Here's some other things that people had said. And, there's a couple of quotes in here that actually, get me a bit emotional sometimes, but I think the cross-cutting theme across a lot of this qualitative data that we collected is that people felt a lot more connected, not only to one another, the people who are living in the home, but also to other people who are participating in this program. But here's one that, I really think about quite a bit. And I said, well, why does this one really bother me? Well, you can see in this one, this participant says, it gives me more things to look forward to. I just feel like I'm waiting for my life to start again or to end in it. And it reminds me that a lot of older adults, because we've been ageist and we haven't prepared for older adults and for the experiences that they would like to have, a lot of older adults feel like they don't have a purpose anymore. They've really been discriminated against in the housing market, in the workplace, in the healthcare system, and everywhere else. And it's not surprising that many older adults would feel this way. The other couple of questions that we asked are, well, do you think it could address issues like social isolation? Because social isolation is one of the reasons why people might leave their home or their community, might want to think about going to retirement living or long-term care. And if you think back about what I was saying earlier, that upwards of 10% of older adults who are living in long-term care or nursing homes might be there because we're not meeting their social and emotional needs. Well, we need to do better at that. And we need to keep people in their homes and communities because that's where people want to be. And actually, our communities benefit when older adults are in our communities because there's a lot of things that older adults do that we really don't notice, like the free volunteer work, like the caregiving, like the childcare, all sorts of other things that older adults contribute to our communities that really supports community cohesion that would be lost if older adults were to continue to move out of our communities, and we don't want that. And well, it goes back to this idea about the delay of moving out of a community. And in some of my classes, I ask my students, I say, look, in the context of an age-friendly world, whether it's your workplace or the healthcare system or the school or your community, I want you to look around. Do you see people who are older than you? Do you see people who are a lot older than you there? Because if you don't, that's a problem. Because that means that that space or that place is going to be a place where you will be unwelcome as well in some time, in some capacity also. So keep an eye out for that because that's very important. Now, here's a question that sometimes people ask, and I'll get to the calculation very shortly after, is, well, what are the benefits? Well, some of them I highlighted to you. Well, there's the financial assistance. But the question is, well, if people save some money, the students, or people make some money, the older adults, what do they do with it? Well, here's some of the things that they do. They engage in recreation and leisure and entertainment that they would not have if they didn't have that extra support financially. Home modifications, medication. Some of their very ageist views changed. So it's not just younger people being ageist towards older adults. It's older adults being ageist towards younger people. And it's actually, again, because there's very few opportunities for intergenerational engagement. There's a greater sense of connectedness, not only to other people who are in the program, like I mentioned, but also just to others in the community because, well, this program is facilitating some connections, improved quality of life, and just, well, some assistance with daily activities has made me feel a little bit better. And we also did do some evaluation. We also did measure some of the issues around social engagement and networking and well-being and volunteering. And the networking one was the one that I think is the most surprising to me because what had happened was there was a lot of older adults who would report on their intake survey that they felt isolated or lonely. And what they would actually end up doing is making friends with people who are in the program. So organically, other people who are in the program and they had a common shared interest and they valued the home sharing experience, they would make friends with other older adults and they would make friends with other students. And all of a sudden they had a new network of people. And again, I think the key part about this is that after a certain age, if you think about where you met your friends, and I say this to our students as well, is think about where you met your friends. You met them at school, you met them at church, you met them at work. But if you're no longer at work and if you're no longer at school and you're having a hard time getting to church or to a spiritual center, it's hard for people to make new friends. And as you're getting older, unfortunately, because of life course changes and just the way that life works sometimes, you're at risk for your social support network of shrinking. So we have to actually be really sort of intentional in creating opportunities for engagement and support at all ages. And I'll take a little breather here and I'll let you hear from one of the participants in the program about their experiences. And this was covered by the CBC. And you can see that they headlined it, "Seniors desperately want to stay in their own space," which is true.
When people are asking like, oh, where are you living? Like, oh, I'm living with my roommate. Oh, what does your roommate do? Oh, she's almost 80. Everyone's always very jealous.
At the beginning, I used to go to her door to knock. That's kind of silly. So now we text.
We text,
Whatever I want, when I want it. It's very sweet. It's very,
no problem. That's what I'm here for. Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm a student with the Toronto Home Share program, and I've been matched with Dorothy.
No, I found it.
Oh, okay. These ones look okay.
Hi, my name is Dorothy, and I am a client or an elder in the Toronto Home Share program.
Oh, I love this mug.
I found it in the newspaper, and I only get the paper once a week, and there it was. I was really looking for somebody else to be in the house. My husband passed away a number of years ago, and many people, well, I should move. Well, where am I going to move to? Because I really love my house.
When people are...
Now, I want to just reiterate again the comment there. Where am I supposed to move to? I really love my house. I've chosen that community, and oftentimes when I'm not in this room presenting, I'm in a spare bedroom of my mother's home because I live with my mother, and so does my sister. And it's kind of like a home share agreement. And the reason why is, well, because my mother, when she was in her early 40s, chose to buy a home that was very close to her brothers and sisters. Many of them live on the same street. But after my father passed away, she was going to have a very hard time living in her home financially, but also with things, again, like shoveling the snow or even doing stuff that's upstairs. It'd be hard for her to live if, my sister and I weren't home. And at some point, maybe my mom also will be in a formal home share agreement as well. But what I want to highlight from that statement and from the CBC video is that affordable housing is the bedrock of an inclusive community that is an age diverse community. And really it is about thinking about that person who is at risk for social exclusion. And I'll go back to the story about my grandfather, someone who might be at risk for a higher depression score because, well, they've gone through a life course event, lost a job, lost a partner, gone through a divorce. They're no longer able to meet their activities of daily living, such as, simple things like bathing and feeding, etc., which are challenging. Not feeling safe, the closest that they're, the closest people to them. They're widowed or divorced, or they're female. And what I can tell you is that a lot of the applicants who are in this program actually fit this profile. They fit the profile of those people who are feeling very socially excluded. And if you think about what it means to actually make an inclusive community, it's giving people a sense of community. It's giving people an opportunity to, again, build the interpersonal relationships that I was talking about, giving them a sense of safety, and really giving them a feeling of connectedness, again, to others and, supports and services. And I'll just highlight to you, just again, quickly, the program has shown a reduction in isolation, the delayed move out of the community, and a general well-being score that has gone up from participating in the program for 4 to 8 months. And sometimes I'm asked this question, and I'm getting to that calculation that I'm just raring to show you. They say, well, what is this about? Is this about housing? Is this about income? What is this really about? Is this healthcare? And I said, well, it's a little bit of everything. Because if you have that older adult who's isolated and lonely and they have no one to call, and they pick up the phone and they call 911 because, well, they don't know who else to call. If they're feeling unwell or there's something wrong, they're not connected to anyone, that might cost the healthcare system about $842 a day. And if they have to be in a long-term care setting, again, place they don't want to be, but because we haven't potentially met their social or emotional needs or let their issues that they're facing while they wait for long-term care or other things really escalate, $126 a day. These numbers have gone up. These are old numbers. And if they need home care, $42 a day. But a program like this one to onboard someone is $197.10. It's $200 to bring on one person into this program. And really what we're saying is let's focus on the protective factors. And here's another question for you. Do you know how many older adults are actually waiting for long-term care in Ontario right now? Because a program like this one could really help support them while they're in the queue and they're waiting. And it depends on who you ask is the answer to this question, but it's between 40,000 to 52,000 people who are waiting for long-term care right now. Again, a place where they don't want to be. And I'll just show you this here, just to show you, how expansive this very simple program and a simple extra bedroom can be in terms of the benefits to places like universities and colleges, to community organizations, to the charity that I work for. It's one of our flagship programs, to students and older adults themselves. And this is really just meant to show you the benefits that there are for a lot of different stakeholders here. And here's that back of the envelope calculation. And this is a literal back of the envelope calculation because someone said, well, are you really making a difference? And I said, well, we're not trying to solve the housing crisis. I can tell you that. We can't do that. That's decades worth of policy work that has led us to this issue. And I cannot increase CPP, old age security, or GIS. And I can tell you that in the pension world, the government, if they give you a 10% increase on your pension, they're going to have a news release about it. So I did some math. 5 million empty bedrooms in Ontario, 2 million empty bedrooms Greater Toronto Area, 12 million empty bedrooms across Canada, 54 million. These are the numbers that I've mentioned 5 times already. So I'm sorry about that, but they're numbers that I think are very important. And let's just very quickly do this math. So if I have 200 older adults that for 1 year make $600 a month extra, $7,200, how much money am I putting back into the pockets of 200 older adults? Because that's the important question. And I'm telling you this because, and I say this to you, and I'm not saying it lightly. I went to a conference recently and there was this charity and it was called Save the Children. And I went back to my computer immediately. I said, is there one that says save the elderly or save the older adults? And there isn't one because no one's coming to save the older adults. And that doesn't matter if you're a current older adult or if you're the 50 to 65 group, or if you're a future older adult. The way that I think policies and programs are right now, that at a certain age of 65 plus, you're on your own. And unfortunately, that cumulative disadvantage that I've been talking about is something that you see replicated in later life right now. But this program can put back $1.44 million into the pockets of those 200 older adults, and that's just 200 of them. And as a percentage, that's $7,200. If you're making about $32,000 or $30,000, which is the average income for an older adult, that's almost a 20% increase, 20+% increase to your income. What about for those same students? And I'll tell you this, and I know there's a couple of my students in this session tonight. There's that story about my grandfather that I think about a lot. And there's also the story about one of my students. She was a graduate student. She was in a master's program, and on my way to class one morning, I saw her getting out of her car, but she wasn't getting out of her car to attend class. She was taking off the blanket. She was putting away her pillow. It's because she was sleeping in her car. And she said to me, well, I only have 3 more weeks of the program to go. I can do this. I can't afford the rent in Toronto anymore. And so I've just been sleeping in my car. I eat at the cafeteria. I shower at the gym. And this is what it's going to be like. And what I want to again highlight to you is that it doesn't have to be this way. But in places like Toronto, where rent is $2,300 as of January 14th for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, it is unaffordable. It is also unattainable. But if I can put $1,700 back into the pockets of those students, that's $3 million+ back into the 3.6, I think, if I did my calculation right, back into the pockets of those students who are going to be our future old. So really what this is thinking about that cumulative advantage and disadvantage. So if we disadvantage our young people right now, you will see that disadvantage play out in their later years as well. Now, as I finish up, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the sort of barriers. And I'm going to go back to that issue of the golden girls. Well, some of the barriers are just about ageism, some self-ageism, where older adults say, well, I don't want to participate in the program because I don't want to look like this needy older adult who, needs a student to help around the house. I live in a very posh area. And, this is not a home share community. So I don't want people to know about that. That's a couple of the things that I've heard. The other issues are, well, can we get insurance for this? And I can tell you that as a result of programs like this one, there are providers now who are going to allow you to get insurance for home sharing. One of them that I know is Square One Insurance, and we are no way affiliated with them or anything like that. But, we just know about that program because some of our participants were able to get that. There are bylaws also that really become a problematic issue for people who want to participate in this program. And they're different across the country. And this is the key part here that we're trying to learn. Now, the part that bothers me the most is the impact on the pensions. The people who need the program the most are so afraid that that additional money that they'll make. So you're making $21,000 to $22,000, but you're worried that if you make another $6,000 to $7,000 as a result of participating in this program, your pensions will be clawed back. So they say, well, I could really use the support, but I'm so worried that that's additional income for me. So I'm hoping that governments really pay attention to this.
Raza, we haven't got any sound for you right now. There's no sound.
No? Okay. Hold on.
There we go.
You can hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
So it's saying that my internet connection is unstable, but I'll start back again about this impact on the pension part, where that person who's making $21,000 is really worried about that additional income that's going to lead to them having their income clawed back. Well, that's that person who would most greatly benefit from this program, not only for the support around the home, but that's the person who's at risk for isolation, who's at risk for abuse, and really could benefit from that additional support. Now, the going back to the Golden Girls, and maybe many of you have heard of this, but there was a group back in Scugog, 4 older women who bought a home and wanted to live together. And actually the community pushed back on them. And it was not only the community, but also the local counselors. And they said, well, 4 older women living together over the age of 65, and you're all unrelated, well, that constitutes a retirement home. And your home that you're buying is not zoned for a retirement home, which led to, well, a little bit of backlash. Lindsay Park here actually putting forward the Golden Girls Act, which now allows 4 or more unrelated people over the age of 65 to live together without having to worry about issues such as zoning. And I have to tell you that this had to be one of the most ridiculous things that I've heard in the longest time. And when you think about how, home sharing was glamorized in the video that I showed you earlier, and how difficult some municipalities and some really outdated bylaws have made it for programs like this one to be implemented in our community. So as I finish up, I'll just tell you that, well, we do need a little bit of a culture change. People have to start to think about their homes and that extra bedroom and say, yeah, I'm amenable to this idea of this shared housing economy where I can leverage that empty bedroom for a little bit of support to really help support the student as well, to address issues of isolation, and to really think about it in a different way. And what we really have to do is be proactive in our approaches and really think about the benefits of programs like this one. And, the move from the pilot to the national expansion, you can see is that we've really tried to learn from it, to adapt, prioritize the safety, collect the data, go out and give talks like this one, which I'm very grateful for, and really to share this information and these ideas. And I'm happy to say that the program, we are in 5 cities and we'll be in additional 7 cities in this coming year. We do have funding support for the next few years, and we're really hoping to build out the model so that we can have a greater impact in our communities. And it was recognized, this program, by the World Health Organization as one of the age-friendly best practices. And so we were very pleased with that attention, and we're really hoping that home sharing and co-housing, some of the solutions that we've been talking about, are going to be ones that you see more and more in our communities, and that there is a greater uptake for them. And I'll go back to some of the headlines. So in the first few slides, I showed you some really negative headlines, and I'm happy to say that, well, programs like this one are catching the attention of news and media. And, You can see a couple of our participants were in the Washington Post and they were in the Maclean's magazine. But I want to also highlight to you that the fact that these stories are making the news also really signals for us that there is a very big need in our communities that continues to be unmet. And I hope that programs like this one and all of us together will be able to address those needs. So I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today, and I'll be happy to take questions and to just engage in a discussion with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raza. That was an excellent presentation. It really gives us a good idea about, how important home sharing actually is. And this particular home share program deals with matching older adults and students. We also have Pat here where there are senior women also choosing to live together and other communities of people choosing to live together. But as Raza pointed out, some municipalities do have these barriers in the way of bylaws that actually prevent this from happening. So if people have questions, if you can just put your hand up, and the way you do that is if you go to reactions at the bottom of your screen, you'll see, if you click on that, you'll see it says raise hand. So you can just raise your hand up. There we go. George Hartsgrove. Do you have a question, George? If you unmute.
Yes, well, let me unmute myself first. So I've got two questions actually that I put in the chat.
Sure.
Number one is, why do you restrict your program to students?
Okay.
Because I was involved with an organization here in Ottawa, and we didn't restrict it to students. We're just younger people, end of story. So that's one question. And the other question is, why do you look generally at short terms, like 4 months, 8 months? I know it coincides with the school curriculum and that sort of thing, but especially with older people, the change of a new person every 4 months, that can be somewhat unnerving to older adults. And I would think that a longer term system would, in fact, provide much more stability to that older person. So those are my two questions.
Nice to speak with you, George. I really appreciate both of those questions, and we did put some thought into it. So let me share some of that background thinking about the student part first. So the program started off as the Toronto Home Share Program, and in Toronto, we had noticed a lot of the similar issues that older adults were facing with regards to housing affordability, financial precarity. But in designing and developing the program, I think a really key piece for us was to say, okay, what does this look like if it's successful and if we want to scale it and replicate it? And scaling and replicating it, we wanted to see what sorts of community anchors there were that were not just in the city of Toronto, but also in places like Vancouver, or Calgary, or Perth, or in Ajax, or in Ottawa, or somewhere else. And there was 2 or 3 of those places. There were malls, there were spiritual centers, and there were colleges and universities. So colleges and universities provide us with access to a housing office, which gives us a steady sort of stream of housing applicants who can continue to apply to this program. It addresses the issue of intergenerational engagement, addresses the issue of ageism, and also addresses the need of the future role that I was talking about, that really that there is financial precarity for both of these populations and really creating a disadvantage. The people who are looking for shared accommodations also are increasingly younger people who cannot get into the housing markets in these big cities or even in these small towns. And so that's the part around the students. The other part about the students was, well, universities and college have a code of conduct that students are expected to sort of abide by as well. So it gives a bit more of a layer of protection there as well. Your second question, and I will tell you that there is increased interest in older adults living with older adults. And the program is designed in such a way that now that it's been scaled and replicated a little bit more across the country, that we have the options now that we're in the market to potentially accommodate for that too. And so that is a future iteration that we're looking at about using the platform and the whole home share experience to build it out for older adults with other older adults too. Short-term accommodations, I think that it's really about the flexibility that the individual wants. This is really about the older adult, and they get to dictate whether they want a 4-month or an 8-month or a 12-month sort of agreement. And we help facilitate that requirement that they have. For some of the older adults in this program, they actually love having a new student every 4 months. They just want to experience the different sort of cultures and backgrounds, etc. And there was one participant who's been in the program since the beginning and has probably had about 10 students live with them. And they say that's a great opportunity for me to learn from them and for there to be an exchange. And so that's the flexibility that's built into that. But again, it's designed in a way that the older adult can say, I would prefer a 1-year match and a 1-year agreement, and we match you with a student who's looking for something similar to that. So I hope I've answered your question, and if not, please feel free to put it back into the chat and you follow up and I'll address it. But thank you so much for that question.
Okay, Cecily and then Leslie.
Hi, good evening.
Hi,
I just wondered, have you had any experiences where people have signed up, they've started the program, everything seemed to be going along great, and then personality-wise, they just weren't happy? Have you had that happen? And if so, how did you deal with it?
So it's usually never a personality issue. And what I'll tell you is that because of the upfront work that we do in this program to go through an interview and make people introduce themselves to one another, we try to work out some of the personality issues ahead of time. Oftentimes it's issues around like, well, you know, they let the garbage overflow to a point where I didn't really like, or they didn't put the dishes away that I want. So it's really about learning to live with one another. That's beyond just the personality issues. The issues that do sometimes come up are related to a quick cognitive decline for an older adult. There was one particular instance that I remember where one of the older adults was a grandparent who at one point had been raising a grandchild and then had to take custody of their grandchild. And therefore the student was expected to move out within a month and a half. And we had some additional homes that were available for the student to move into. But it's more of those issues that sometimes come up rather than it being strictly a personality clash.
Okay, I'm just curious because I have a lot of friends that I love, and I just kind of wonder, they come and visit and it's great, but after 4 or 5 days, I'm like, thank goodness you're going home, you know, so you know what I mean? Like, I just kind of wonder whether that ever happens. There's somebody says, no, I can't do this.
You know what, let me tell you this in the context of the numbers that I shared. You know, I talk about 2 million empty bedrooms and 12 million 54. It doesn't mean that all of them are available. It doesn't mean that everybody wants to share their home or their bedroom. It just means that the program like this one is available should the person want to do it. And I can tell you, Cecily, that your experience is like a lot of people are like, oh, love the program, love the idea. They come to a session like this one and they're like, I'm not ready for this one, but I might be in the future. And so, you know, as circumstances change, you know, people might be a little bit more amenable to it. But some people, like my mother, I can tell you, if it wasn't my sister and I living here, I think she would just rather live in her home alone. That's her preference because she's very particular about certain things. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Leslie Walker and then Trish.
Thank you, Raza. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I just want to let you know, everybody know that I work for an organization, a nonprofit organization called Canada Homestay Network, and it's my understanding that the two organizations have been in touch. I know that we were told that if we had seniors who needed help and could no longer manage hosting the way we do it, that we could, you know, send them to you, although your program isn't in every city that we're in. Yeah. So Canada Homestay Network is an organization that's been around for 30 years, and we work with colleges, universities, and public school boards, private schools across the country. And we bring international students in and offer host families, the student to live with our families. Now, I want to speak about it from my age viewpoint. I'm 68. I'm quite mobile. I'm healthy. I have a rented home where I have 3 bedrooms. One's for me, 2 is for students, and I love having my students. It gives me company. I just enjoyed them. Yeah, I can't I don't even know if there's much point in wasting your time telling you all the benefits. You could certainly go to the website to see that. But I just, a couple of things I wanted to ask about your program. It's a fairly low rate that the students are paying. And I already have hosts complaining that the $900 that our students are paying is too low and they can't afford groceries. So that is a concern I can see that you potentially, you know, may find coming up. I think we don't just do this with seniors. So we're looking for hosts and any age. You have to be over 25. But I find this suits my needs, particularly right now, but I can see in the future, and that's one of the reasons I've joined Senior Women Living Together with Pat Dunn, is finding other seniors to potentially share rent with. So I wanted everybody to know there's more than that one program. We're in every city across Canada. If you're younger and you're able and you think you would like to host a student, you could probably do it through our organization. But I'm really pleased to find that you are helping us get the word out about what we as seniors need to be with other people in our own homes. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. And I have heard about your program, and I'm sure it was, you know, one of our colleagues that connected with you. I know that you have a partnership with Sheridan College, and they speak very highly of you and your program, and it's a very important need for them. With regards to your first comment about the rents that are in this program, so the rents in this program are between $400 and $600 because there is the expectation that the student is going to be contributing in the home for 5 to 7 hours. And so we account for that. And this is, again, an outdated number from a few years ago when this program started, as looking at what this actual sort of in-kind support that the student is providing in the home of that older adult. And that leads to the rent subsidy. That being said, it is very difficult for us to sometimes get hosts in communities because we're competing with a very hot rental market. And so they're saying, well, maybe I don't need a student who's going to help me around the house because remember that light bulb that's going to cost me $50 to get changed? I can get 6 of them changed if I charge $1,200. So I think there's, in the new version of this that you'll see roll out in the spring, which will be enabled with technology as well, you'll see that there will be a little bit more flexibility for the older adults to ask a little bit more. And also in places like Halifax to ask a little bit less than $400 because rooms in Halifax are being rented out for $200 right now because their housing market is a little bit different. And so again, to your point about being a national organization and a national sort of entity, I think it comes down to being able to scale and replicate using a technology solution. And that's what we're working on right now. And it's difficult right now because, well, everything we do is manual. You go to the website, you fill out an application, and the actual human being goes through everything, and it causes a little bit of a bottleneck. So that's a bit of a challenge. And I think, you know, to your other point about this as being one of the alternatives, and, you know, we've heard about senior women living together. We've heard about, you know, the Canada Homestay Network. I'm really pleased to see that this ecosystem of alternative housing options is increasing and that we're really thinking about this shared housing economy because, as I said, no one is coming to save us. Not the future old, not the current old, not my mother, not me. And so we really have to band together. And, you know, I'm looking forward to working with you and everybody else on this and bringing it to the attention of you know, the municipalities and others. And yeah, so thank you so much for your comment. And I look forward to connecting with you again.
Great. Thank you, Leslie, for that. And Trish Rawsthorne, sorry.
Yep, thank you. Very nice program that you're running, both of you. I am really concerned. I'm from Manitoba, so I'm more concerned about the older adults because we did have university students living with older adults before, and it worked out quite well. But I have a concern with the 61% of people who live in their homes here who have limited incomes and are going to be forced out of their homes or deposited early into long-term care, which is something no one wants. So I'm just wondering, on Hodgeway, in Amsterdam, their way of dealing with matching people up. If you were ever going to go into an older adult to older adult home sharing situation, they match them up based on their culture, their norms, their values, and what type of environment that they would normally be living in. And that's how they deal with people not being all put into one room, so to speak, and then having conflicts. So I think it's an excellent way of mirroring what those people normally would be experiencing. And I'm thinking about students coming over or older adults who come from other countries need to be with their own kind, but there's others that want to experience other cultures as well.
No, I appreciate that comment and that statement that there is a compatibility issue here in terms of the student and the older adult, or an older adult and older adult. And the program that we have designed allows for maximum flexibility so people can express their preferences, and so that there is cultural compatibility and linguistic compatibility and religious compatibility if that is a priority for them. And for many people it is not. They'd like to learn about different cultures and they really want to experience and share their own culture. And for many participants in this program, what becomes the real draw for them is that they become the first landing spot for a student or someone who's moving to Toronto from places far off like Aurelia. No kidding. Seriously, people from Aurelia who are moving into the city, they're saying, well, I don't want to just go and live on residence. I want to really experience the city first. And so that older adult kind of becomes their host and their tour guide, and they've really just taken on that role and run with it. So some people really want people who are not compatible in terms of all those different criteria, and others have a really specific expression of these are the specific things that I need, and we try to accommodate that to the best we can. But it's a great point, and you're right. Yeah.
Right. Thanks.
Do people have other questions? If you do, you go to the reactions button at the bottom and just click on it and hit raise your hand. And I'll try and get to you. I'm not seeing any other hands. Is it? Oh, there's Kim and Harry have questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm saying hi to Lana. I see Lana's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kim?
Hi, Kim.
Hi there. Thanks so much for that presentation. It's great. And it's so amazing to see this as an option because it's so badly needed and takes a bit of coordination, but so worth it.
Yeah.
One of my questions was just around the types of agreements that are made between the, I'm not going to say a tenant because it's not under the LTB, but between the senior and the student. Do you have examples of, like, it sounds like it's specific to what the needs are, but is it like a legal agreement they're signing to say this is what I will do and this is what, these are my roles and responsibilities?
Well, the legality of it is a bit of a gray area, and that's the challenge with a home share. It's not really a rooming house. It's not really a rental agreement, and so we facilitate that. And what are some of the things that are outlined on that agreement are things like whether you're going to smoke, what about visitors? What is the policy in terms of what you're suggesting that you will do in the home? So if you say you're going to take out the garbage, how will we keep things accountable that you're going to do that? The other part really is about the transaction of money. When will it happen? And so it's fairly standard in terms of what this would look like in terms of a rental agreement, but it's not necessarily a rental agreement. And that's another issue with regards to programs like this one, is that it really falls into a gray area of whether this is a landlord or tenant, or what is the relationship between these two people. But as of right now, there is no clear-cut answer for it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Does that answer the question? Yeah, it's a fairly flexible agreement that is tailored to whatever it is that the older adult and the student are saying. So we have a standard template, but again, we build it in so it's really just like modular, so it meets their needs. Yeah.
Individual needs. No, that's great. Sometimes gray is better than black and white, just saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to that point, if I could just quickly say that during the pandemic, when we were hearing a lot about like tenants not leaving and all these issues around rent, et cetera, some of the older adults said, well, you know what, I prefer this gray area. I actually prefer the flexibility that's here. So that's one of the other things that we learned.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Harry?
Yeah, I just want to talk about tax implications for a sec, because there probably are, because it's rental income.
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, there are benefits and problems with it, like you mentioned, around pensions. And particularly OAS, if you're getting close to that line where they claw back. But there are also deductions in a rental situation. So I'm wondering, do you have volunteers who help some of the seniors who can't afford accounting costs? Do you have any volunteers who will help them prepare their taxes where they can deduct some of the rental costs or the rental expenses?
Yeah, in the current iteration of the program, we don't, but in the future, I think that is a great idea to maybe even host a seminar or a workshop like this one to highlight the tax implications and how there could be benefits for people.
Yeah.
But at the time, there's not, and we encourage people to talk to their own financial advisor before participating in the program, or to a free sort of accounting clinic or something that might be in their community. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, great. Jan Pennycook?
Hi, I'm curious. I was happy to hear about vetting in the program. My concern is about bringing strangers into my home and feeling safe. And so I'd like to know more about the vetting. And I was wondering too what the opportunities are for, we've talked about conflict a little bit, for mediation, if all is not going well, or if as the adult I'm feeling I'm not being able to communicate about the agreement not being fulfilled, will the organization step in or provide kind of this safety net that you can call in and say, okay, this isn't working. Is someone able to visit us or something like that?
So in this version of the program that you're hearing about, this was all facilitated by social workers. And so in this version that you're seeing currently, it was almost like a case management approach where the matching was reviewed by social workers, the matches were facilitated by social workers. If there was issues around mediation, it did come down to social workers. Now, in the program evolving, we're hoping that there will be a social service worker who will coordinate the entire program. But in working with social workers who were able to do things like go to your home and mediate, whatever, the program became very regional. So we were sort of stuck with saying, well, we need to have someone on the ground who's able to do that. And so in the new version of it, I think a lot of this will be a bit more virtual, and people are a little bit more amenable to that virtual sort of mediation and things like that. But oversight of the program, as I mentioned in one of the slides, was a very important aspect of it, and it will remain a very important aspect of it. And that agency, while we are facilitating it, we will also provide oversight too.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the vetting process, there was this one slide where it shows you a pretty big process, like there's a bunch of dots and education and things like that. The upfront work that goes into making a match is actually fairly robust to address any of the issues that the student or the homeowner has, to make sure it's a very good compatible match. And we do that work up front, and it takes a bit of time to make sure that we don't have any issues later. But yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Wally Halliday?
Yep, I got to get myself off mute here. Yep. Good. That was great. I really enjoyed the presentation tonight. The one thing that I think, because one of the things we deal with sometimes is home takeovers, and a lot of the seniors, sometimes they'll take somebody in out of necessity, or they might take a student in, and next thing you know, boyfriend or girlfriend moves in or whatever, and home takeover type thing starts to take place. I take it, and you spoke to it a wee bit in the previous question and answer there regarding the vetting and regarding the fact that somebody's there. What happens in that case, or does somebody come in and say, hey, you're out, we move on, or what?
Well, I would say that, hypothetically, if that was the case, that yes, we would have staff who would go in and really help to mediate that issue. But luckily, we haven't seen anything even remotely close to that in our program here. And it's not simply about necessity. And I think that's part of the assessment that goes on ahead of time to say, what is this person's motivation to join the program? And if it's simply a financial motivation, because, they're looking for cheap rent, but they don't really care whether it's an older person or someone like that, they're not really interested in engaging in the home of that person or contributing. Those are all big red flags for us. And so there's this part that we really focus on to say, this is beyond a financial transaction. This is really about a relationship building exercise. And so that upfront, again, part where we, try to facilitate that relationship building, I think gives us all a bit of insight into people's motivations. let's just get a chance to see some of the red flags that might come up and make sure that it's a very good match so that we can avoid problems like the one that you're talking about, but about a home takeover or some sort of other, act of indecency like that. So yeah, it's a great point. But again, some upfront work has really helped address some of those issues.
Okay, that's great. Are there other questions anybody has at this point? I'm looking for hands up. Or just wave at me. I think I can see most people now.
If I can, Patricia,
Jill?
here again.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
just as a follow-up, Dr. Mirza, is that vetting process that you have there, is that something that would be easily changed over to senior with senior type setup, or something that we could look at that would be accommodating for that?
Yeah, I think we should look at it and see how other, the other ways that we can look at this program. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this program was designed with scaling and replicability really in mind. And what we're trying to do in this new version of the program that will roll out in April or a little bit after that is using a technology platform that'll allow other people who are also interested in the program to potentially use the platform to, create this ecosystem of home sharing. So if you want to do home sharing in your community, you could join us at Canada Home Share and say, well, I'd like to create this program that's older adults with older adults. We're not there yet, but we are hoping that in the next few years, once we are really, strongly footed in these communities, that we'll be able to do that. But the process itself of doing the matching and looking at people's compatibility, doing a vulnerable sector screening, doing reference checks, etc., that process really can be applied to any segment of the population. And I think that's one of the other simple beauties of this program. And I really do hope that we move towards older adults with older adults as well, because that is a strong demand that we're hearing about in my emails, in my calls. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I saw Jill waving at me a few minutes ago. Jill?
Just a quick question. Do you see yourself coming to Niagara region in the near future?
I love Niagara. I really do. And I would love to
There's
go to
lots
Niagara
of it
region
here.
anytime. Though I know my aunt actually lives in St. Catharines, and she lives in a big home as well with 2 extra bedrooms and 6 cats. But she probably could use a visit and a home share agreement as well. So I'll be happy to come down to Niagara. I tell people this as a little side. My PhD is in pharmacy. It's not in housing. But I love this program and I really see the benefits of it. And therefore, I'm happy to come down anywhere you'd like me to talk about this and to really get people thinking about ways to support themselves, because I'm going to sound like a broken record. No one's coming to save us. So we might as well band together and save ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah. Trish?
Sorry, I just had one other question about, older adult to older adult, and whether or not there was a way to convince our municipal and provincial governments to update their zoning and housing bylaws. And I don't know if you've ever approached them, or is there some way that we can do that so that we can facilitate having home shares, because everybody wants to stay within their community. It's beneficial for that. I'm hoping that if somehow I can get the home care changed, which across Canada we know is not satisfying the needs, and if we could have a community-based system with nurse management care, then we'd have the safety aspect involved as well in nurturing the relationships and keeping that going.
Well, in terms of the bylaw issue and talking to municipal governments, I did engage in a consultation with the provincial government in Ontario in 2019. So there was a number of us stakeholders who are at this roundtable, and they did develop a guide on co-housing and home sharing that is available. If you just type in Government of Ontario co-housing home sharing, there's a guide that you should be able to see. So the governments are thinking about it. And I think that, I'll tell you that one of the slides that people bring out their phones and take pictures of when I'm talking to municipalities or policymakers is that one with the cost of the hospital and the long-term care and the home care. And I think the other piece about getting people to really focus on this and getting them to think about it is to put it under the umbrella of social prescribing, where, for example, if an older adult shows up in a healthcare setting and while you've identified that they might be lonely or isolated and potentially at risk for moving out of their community, that there is some sort of health or social link that can send them to a program like this one. And so this becomes an intervention that is going to link the community system and the healthcare system and the social service system. And we need as many of these programs as we can, because the older adult population is very diverse. Their needs are diverse. And we have to have systems and policies, especially bylaws, that are going to continue to evolve and meet the needs of whatever it is that people need right now. And so I'm really glad to see that the Golden Girls Act and others are paying attention, because, well, all of this mess that we're in right now is because, and I say this often, is because, well, we haven't been age friendly. We've been age unfriendly for the last 20 or 30 decades, 20 or 30 years, and for these decades. And we've only thought about older adults in the context of the current older adults, not what the future older adults are going to need. And I'll tell you this one other statistics. 2035 is when the housing supply will sort of match the demand. 2035. We looked at a lot of the municipal licenses and the applications for housing, and the only supply that is going to outstrip the demand is in condominiums. They are no longer building homes because, well, you can collect a lot more property tax dollars from condos, and that's what builders are building. But so again, housing is a scarce resource, and bylaws need to address some of these issues that we're talking about.
Great,
thank you.
Absolutely. Pat, did you want to add anything about women living together before we close for tonight?
Yeah, sure. Well, essentially, I really like Raza, what you say, you know, nobody's there. They're not going to come and fix this for us. We got to do it ourselves. And that's actually what happened to me. So 4 years ago, when I founded Senior Women Living Together, I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere with my future life unless I did something about it. So I started Senior Women Living Together. And what we do is we help senior women find other senior women that are compatible to live together in rental housing. The population we serve are lower income, some moderate now though, since rents have gone ridiculous, particularly in the major centers. And like you talked about, Raza, we don't go on site to vet people, but we encourage the homemade groups as they meet to ask the harder questions, like, you know, can you verify your income? Can you tell me more about your, you know, mental health background? We train our members to look at really going in depth to find the right fit for them. And we've even with COVID, we've managed to be quite successful. We've got 47 women housed now.
Wonderful. That's great. Okay, we have time for one more. So Jen has her hand up. Raza, did you want to comment or anything?
Oh, no, I was just saying it's very nice to meet Pat and everyone else around the screen tonight, and I look forward to meeting you in person or in some other forum where we can talk about this in a lot more detail and really mobilize for some action.
Yeah.
Raza, how do we follow you? Just through the website?
Oh, you can just email me directly. I will put my email in this chat box here.
I'm interested in the aging in place factor, because there's more to it than just for us, because we're going in rentals. You know, how do we get home care involved? How do we, you know, create the community, the other communities that we need to be helping us as we age? Because the one place none of us want to be is long-term care.
That's right.
Agree. Yeah.
Jen, you've had your hand up.
I have, thank you. I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed this presentation. I found it very exciting and hopeful. I'm recently widowed in January and I have way more room than I need, but I want to feel safe about the situation. I'm speaking with you from London, Ontario, which has already declared itself an age-friendly city. So I would, having heard that you're willing to come to Niagara, I would like to invite you to London, and I will push to make that happen if you'd be willing to speak, if I pull the people together.
Sure.
I have two acquaintances actually who have informally set up a home sharing situation after she was widowed. So that there's a background of interest there, and simply for me, the whole sort of formalizing of the program, making it safe and secure, sounds wonderful.
So I want to start by just saying I'm really sorry to hear about your loss, and I hope that you're doing as okay as possible. I'd be
Thank
happy
you.
to, yeah, be happy to come to London and to speak to you about this program and to really get people thinking about ways that they can leverage their spare bedrooms and really build a sense of community around a program like this one. So you just let me know. There's my email address here, and I'll be happy to do that. So thanks so much.
I will, thank you. I will get to
Yeah.
work on that. It's very exciting. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I'll tell you that I too have been looking forward to this whole week. I've been very excited. These slides and everything is just for you. And I really appreciate this opportunity. So again, this is all because of Trish and Harry. And so it's really great.
Thank you so much, Raza, for this. And I just want to answer a couple of questions that are in the chat because it'll be faster. The presentation has been recorded, so there will be a YouTube link for people who want to watch it. And the Raza has kindly agreed, I think, to let us distribute the slides. Is that right?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we will distribute the slides as well. And somebody has asked a question about connecting as a Canada-wide group. We have SSAOs starting in other provinces, so that's very nice to see happen. Yes, and just to answer the question, SSAO has tried to connect with CARP. We haven't received a response. We have also come across a problem in that some CARP locals are accepting money from long-term care corporations. So that puts their goals a little bit in conflict with ours. So it makes it difficult for us to collaborate on that level. But just to let you know, we are trying and we're collaborating with a number of organizations. But CARP sadly has not been one of them to date. So just to answer that for you. Raza, I just want to thank you so much because this has been a really interesting presentation and we so appreciate you having come to share this with us. I think this is going to be helpful to a lot of people. And, you know, I know that this is a big topic and a lot of us, I mean, are concerned, you know, that what happens as we age, what happens, you know, if we lose people, that sort of thing. So it's a very important and a personal topic, I think, for people.
Yes.
So thank you for being so reassuring and so helpful tonight. So.
And if I could just give a little bit of a plug to Help Age Canada, which is the national charity that I work for. This is just one of the programs that we have. And I want to, again, connect you to Help Age Canada so you can see that we work on digital literacy. We will have a new program which is associated with the Men's Sheds movement in Canada. We have an age-friendly transportation group as well that we focus on. So if in the future, you know, there are other ways for us to contribute or to collaborate with the SSAO, you sign me up and I'll show up and yeah, I'll be happy to do so. Okay. So thanks again.
That's fabulous. That's great. Okay, thank you, everybody. And unless anyone else has a final word, thank you so much for coming and have a good evening, everybody. And we're right just ahead of 8:30. We're right on time, so you won't miss your bedtime tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.
Don't shut it down yet, hon.
Okay.
Let everyone leave.
Everyone's free to go.
Good night.